Hi everybody, welcome to the shop. While everybody's home, while I'm home, and I have some extra time, now's a good time to do some of those projects around the house. Maybe you didn't have time for, or maybe you didn't even think you could do. One of the easiest home improvements I think I've ever done that adds a really nice look and some value to the home is changing out the light switches. Update those light switches, update your outlets. Some people might think you have to be an electrician to do it, and you don't. It is one of the easiest home improvements you will ever make, requiring the smallest amount of tools, really a very short amount of time. I'm going to show you in real time how quickly I changed out a 3-switch light fixture, and you'll see how quickly it goes. So you've got time right now, so why not, right? Very inexpensive. While you've got a little extra time before you get on the projects, subscribe please, and like, there's that big thumb. Thanks guys, and go.
All right, so to get started, just the basic requirements. Gonna need single pole switches, which is what you would use when the light switch only goes to one fixture. They do make 3-way switches, but they're more expensive and not necessary for this job. And then you need to get a plate switch cover. For this one, I have a 3-switch cover. Here's the old light switches. As you can see, they are outdated. This home was built in 2011, so I'm not sure why they didn't go with the new switches, but it's going to be a quick little fix for us. So we'll put in the new ones and have a whole nice new look to it. Step 1, locate the breaker box, and while you got that extra time, maybe label all those switches so you know where they're going. All right, power's off. So if this is an interior bathroom with no light, you're going to need a light source. So I got my workshop light out. I'm going to hang that up so I can see what I'm doing. You can use a flashlight or a lantern or your phone flashlight, whatever you have on hand, but make sure you can see well, because this is not something you want to do in the dark. All right, so we've got all our power off. Obviously, the lights aren't working, and so it should be safe to proceed. And this is where I get out. It's a flathead screwdriver. And what I prefer to use is the electric screwdriver. If you don't have one, I recommend getting one. They make every job easier, especially when you have multiple screws to turn. It just saves a little wear and tear on the old wrist and forearm, and very little effort involved. And for a job like this, and you're going to be doing your whole house or even just one room, go ahead and make that tiny little investment and get yourself an electric screwdriver. Make your life easier. So we're going to take off the plate, and then we're going to remove the screws that hold in the switches. got all the screws out. Now we can just pull those right out from the wall. They're not going anywhere because the wires are still connected. So I like to do all 3 switches at the same time as opposed to doing one switch at a time. So just kind of like a assembly line type of work there, so it goes a little faster. So you take your wire cutters, and it doesn't matter what size, what kind, whatever you have, whatever you like to use, and just cut those wires off the way they're connected. You're gonna strip the insulation off a little bit later, so you don't have to worry about keeping the part of the wire that's already stripped. Just cut it off quick. It makes it a lot faster. I've done it both ways. It's a lot easier. There's plenty of extra wire. Just give that a cut. Now, I'm not going to speed this video up. Like I said, I want to do this in real time so you can see just how quickly this all goes. Doesn't take very long at all. Obviously, I've done this before, so I know what to do next, so it makes the whole process go faster. I don't know why there's electrical tape around the switch like that. I've never done that, but I'm sure they were concerned about the switches coming in contact with each other, so they're trying to insulate them. But if you install it correctly, that's really not an issue. All right, so let's go ahead and strip off the end of these. Anywhere between 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. I go about 1/2 inch of insulation removal, and then that's all the amount of wire you're going to need. I don't use these screws. The switches have just a little a hole, I will call it, to insert the wire into. As I mentioned before, I am not an electrician, so if I don't use the right terminology, don't worry about it, because maybe that makes it easier, because you probably don't know the terminology either. But if you're an electrician and you do know the terminology, I apologize. But this is such an easy job to do. You don't have to be a professional to do it. Like I said, I like to do all of them at once. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to strip every wire, keeping them. There are 2 wires going to each switch and 1 ground wire for each switch. So those are 3 total wires. As you took them off, you would see that. I keep them all together in little groups, so that way I know where they're going when I'm done. There are different colored wires on one of these. It's a red and a black. The others were just black and black, because it doesn't really matter where you put the wires as far as top, bottom, left, right. They are just completing a circuit. So that's all the switch does, is complete this circuit. That's why it's just a single pole switch, very simple, and you don't have to, it's not very complicated. So now that all the wires are stripped, all I have to do is get the ground wire ready. That does require a screw. That they don't have the hole for that. So just going to give the ground wires a little curl so that they fit around the screw on the switch. Alright, so on this one, I'm going to put the wires in first, top and bottom. Just poke them right in there and they snap right in and they don't come out. It kind of just bites right on there. And then I'm going to slip that ground wire around the screw. Sorry, I don't have the angle, but when you remove the old switches, you'll see sort of how the wire goes around the ground screw, and that's just want to do the exact same thing on this one. It's real simple. And it's pretty obvious, so it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. Normally, on the next 2, I will put the ground wire on first. Just kind of, it's a good habit to be into. You don't have to worry about anything because there is no power going to these switches right now. So you're no shock. You're no risk of getting shocked. But just to be safe, I always like to put that ground wire on first. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and connect the other 2, and then we'll be ready to put everything away. I apologize for the elbow in the camera. Obviously, I'm not a professional cameraman either. All right, and so the switches do come with screws for the wires, but we don't use those. But I go ahead and tighten them all down just to keep everything nice and secure. And so it's all tight and everything is in place. So we're going to go ahead and tuck the wires in first. You don't want to just jam the switch into place and crimp the wires down. So you want to go ahead and feed the wires back into the wall nicely and neatly. And not that you can see it through my elbow, but we're going to go ahead and put the screws back in, and we're going to screw the switches in place. When you screw these down, you want it to be flush with the wall, but just leave a little bit of wiggle. It needs to touch the wall, but still be able to slide a little bit side to side, because that switch cover is going to line them up perfectly. And if they're too tight, they might not line up, and you won't be able to move them. So just leave yourself a little bit of wiggle. All right, so everybody's in place. They can be slid just a little bit of wiggle still left in them. So now we need to open up my package here and individually wrapped. And we're gonna put the switch cover in place. And when you put it in place, you might see that the switches aren't exactly straight, or maybe they're too close, too far apart. So you just give them a little wiggle. That's why you left them that way. And then the plate cover itself will line them up perfectly. So once it's in place, go ahead and just screw the flathead screws right back in there. A little electrician tip. This is one of the few electrician things I actually know. When you put your screws back in, when you put that plate cover back on, go ahead and line up your screws one way or the other. Some people go side to side horizontally, some up and down vertically. I prefer the vertical. So all the screws are facing the same way. It's a very small touch. No one would probably ever notice one way or the other, but it's just a nice little detail that you can do to make it look more like a professional custom job. There you go. Switches are in. Up and down. Everything's working. We'll go back out, flip the breaker switch, and see how it goes. Very nice. What an improvement. The light switches are on. Lights are working. And didn't take any time at all. Just a nice custom improvement. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope you made it to the end. This doesn't take very long. I'll see you next time.